Hey, Tim.
Hey, Kasha, how's it going?
I am good.
See everyone. I think
There are a few people like coming in, so.
yeah. So this is going to be like a mix of GUSIF people and some folks from some other clubs as well. So
Cool.
I imagine we'll see like a steady flow of folks. So
Okay, sounds good. No problem. So do you want to give him a minute or so to join? Up to you.
yeah, I'd give it like another minute, and then we can just kind of start off. I think people have an idea of what it's like, so it shouldn't be too hard for folks to kind of pick up.
That sounds good.
If they come in like a few minutes, and I know Adam had mentioned that he was going to be a few minutes late because he has class, but
Okay, yeah, no worries. No problem.
good to see everyone.
Tim.
All right, what time zone are you in?
I'm 12 hours ahead of Eastern, but like my body clock's been in Eastern the whole time. So
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah, it's funny. We'll have like discussions with like the board and the PMs, and we'll talk about like we just don't want to put too much pressure on the kids because we're in the different time zones. And I'm like, dude, they're already up. They have to take classes at Eastern time anyway. Like it's new. It's
Yeah.
be worse if we try and make it like different, you know?
Yeah, like honestly, the only thing that like makes me want to stay up is coming to club meetings. So if you guys take it easy and don't let us do anything, I'd probably just go back to sleep.
That's nice of you. You don't have to lie though. It's okay. We'll give it like another, minute or so.
Sounds good.
Austin,
I'm going to make you co-host, so if people come in,
sure.
You can let them in.
Perfect. Austin, are you in DC?
Yeah, I am.
Sorry, I was writing an email. Was there people from different time zones? Is that what you were asking about, Tim?
Yeah, no, I was talking to some of the folks trying to get an idea of where everyone's kind of logging in from.
Oh, wait, I can hear you, Sammy.
Can you hear me?
Is that me that I can't hear him? Can anyone else
hear you, Tim? Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, Kashik, are you able to hear me?
I can't hear. Oh shit! Can hear.
Can hear you.
Can you speak?
Hello?
Oh, wow.
Hello?
Maybe it's me. Fuck. What is going on here? Hold on, guys. So weird. I just had a Zoom thing in here. Can you hear me? Okay. Tim, do you want to say something again?
Yeah, can you hear me?
All right, hold on. Let me try to dial
No,
back in. Hold on, guys.
No worries.
Testing. Okay, this is interesting. Tim, let me dial back in, guys. Sorry about that. Does that mean you guys all have to dial back in?
I'm not sure. I think we can just click the link again, though.
Okay, sorry. Oh wait, now I can hear you now, so we're good. Okay.
Okay, I think we can get started. So I think this is almost all GUSIF kids, but I'll let you know if anyone else comes in. Super excited to have everyone here today. GUSIF is partnered with Elevate. Elevate's a career network, helps place kids into accelerated careers in like finance, consulting type roles. And so we did one of these kind of like limited sessions over the summer. I think it was really helpful for the folks who attended. And so we're going to try and do a couple more of these. So we're really excited about the chance to partner with Elevate because of the fact that I think it offers a lot of great resources. I can tell you just like personally, Kaushik's been really helpful to me in sort of figuring out my own career path. And I think he has a lot of kind of really helpful insight to provide to people who are kind of trying to figure out, what do I want to do out of college? Where do I want to intern? What do I want to do moving forward? Kind of starting to think about the different options that you have and the characteristics of like different types of industries and subsets of industries. And so I think this will be really helpful for people of all years. And with that, Kaushik, I'll pass it over to you and then I guess we'll go into questions at the very end.
Sure. I think given we've sort of manageable group, I'll give you a quick bio. It'd be great to get sort of, I think Austin, Leo, Tim, some of you guys I know from other stuff. So I think, maybe you might be helpful for my so we could be the most helpful to give me just a 10 seconds on what your background and what you're thinking about. But I'll do a quick bio from mine. I'm super excited to be here. Tim, thanks for organizing and arranging. And yeah, I think excited also to be partnered up with GUSIF and Georgetown. I'm originally from the DC area, so I'm extra partial to sort of DC folks. I grew up in Rockville, Maryland, for those that are familiar with the area. And so I think, especially partial to some of our local schools. But yeah, I think I'm excited to be here. I'll give you a little bit of a overview of my career, things that I think worked well for me, things that maybe I should have done differently, as well as give you kind of candid advice from sort of my experience in banking and private equity and beyond, and as well as kind of running Elevate now, where I see we're partnered with 30 of the top schools in the country and their premier like finance groups and business groups, and we're sort of building this kind of next gen platform where I think the whole idea is about connectivity and resources that could be helpful for everyone. So yeah, we look forward to doing all that, and I think there's a few people that are coming in. So Tim, I'll let you handle the letting people in part. So let me just start with sort of my background. Might be helpful for people to give you some context. So like I mentioned, my background is primarily in finance, actually. So I post MBA actually. So I got my MBA really early on, and there's a whole backstory behind that. But I think post my MBA, I started at Goldman Sachs in their investment banking group. Sort of when I thinking about my career at that point, I actually didn't, maybe in retrospect, I might, spruce it up a little bit, but I think I sort of wanted to go to a group that would really challenge me, and an industry mainly that was coming out of a crisis, right? The financial services industry was similar to a lot of the industries today, whether it's, consumer retail or healthcare and things like that, and technology, which I think are going to be the next kind of wave of growth. Financial services was like that when I entered the industry. So if I went into FIG knowing I didn't have a lot of FIG background, but I knew it was an area where I could learn a lot. And so for me, I ended up being that way. So my first couple years in FIG, I got lucky on a few things, but in banking, I also sort of kind of stepped up and got a lot of really great deal experiences. I was the lead associate on what ended up being, I guess, 3 of the largest deals ever in their respective areas within FIG. So I led the $100 billion divestiture of G Capital for Goldman. Goldman is one of the global coordinators of that, along with JP Morgan. And then I led our IPO of Synchrony, which was a kind of a financial services payments and credit card company, which is the largest since Facebook. And then I also led its subsequent split off, and then other sell side stuff. So I think for me, very formative at GS. Also at GS, I was fortunate to take on a lot of leadership roles. So sort of, I think if you're doing well, you will get opportunities given to you. I think that's one other lesson learned for me. I was asked to be chief of staff of investment banking at Goldman within our group, and then more broadly. And then I also led our recruiting teams, promotion teams, et cetera. So I think, kind of bring all those experiences on the Elevate platform, which I founded last year. And on that side, I guess Tim gave us an intro, but what it is or has become is sort of the premier, networking, recruiting, and training platform in my mind. And we're partnered up with, I kind of think of it in 2 ways. One is on the professional side. We're partnered up with professionals from the top firms in the world to bring them on and provide a lot of the resources and content, training, et cetera, recruiting opportunities, et cetera. And then we're also partnered up with sort of the premier finance groups, business groups, investment clubs at the top schools in the country and now the world. We're kind of going abroad as well. Kind of advisors from all of the firms, and then sort of been very fortunate to have on some big name speakers. So let me just give you guys a little bit of a preview of what that is. Tim, I'll share if you guys are interested in getting on the list, and a lot of you guys already are, I'm happy to share like a Google Docs, but we're partnered with kind of firms and professionals that you see on here and a lot more. We kind of host like events and talks and podcasts and things like that are actually really helpful for people as they think about their own careers. To give you guys kind of a sense of scale, these are the schools that we're at. Very fortunate, obviously, to partner with all of these guys, and yours up included. So I think that's the context here. A couple of things I'll point out for you, to the extent that it's interesting. We're just launching, and Tim's been helping us out on this as well, and Leo as well here on this call. But the sort of the Finect, this is the platform, it's the largest networking platform. I think it actually be really interesting for a lot of you guys, where basically I'm inviting 10 or so schools and clubs that I were part of, and have them sort of join this cross-university networking platform where you can get to meet other people at your same grade level or level who are going to the same firms or the same types of industry groups, the same, banks or hedge funds or private equity firms. And so far we've got kind of really good inbound feedback already. So anyone from Georgetown that are interested in joining, you can just go to elevatelab.org and Finect, and you can enter your info, and then we'll kind of put you guys in these sort of sessions. That's one thing. Other thing I want to highlight, and Tim, you could feel free to forward this to the guys, but over the next few weeks, we're having on real professionals, again, like live sessions. So tomorrow I'm talking to a senior partner in private equity. He was actually one of the founding members of Goldman's Special Situations Private Capital Group, and spent 9 years there. And so really happy to have him on. Next week, we're having an associate from Centerbridge, and I think we're going to talk a lot about private equity as an associate, investment banking as an analyst, the recruiting process, all that stuff. Week after that, we're having a senior associate from Goldman. He's on the recruiting team as well, and so we'll talk a little bit about investment banking in particular. Following that, we've got a pipeline of 3 or 4 more people from the hedge fund world and a bunch of VC firms and growth firms and private equity firms. So if you guys are interested, definitely, let me just share that with you now. Put your name down in this Google spreadsheets thing I just created, and we'll send you all the info. And a lot of our conversations, if you guys feel like you want to go back and listen to, they're all online. So they're all sort of on the Elevate website. So feel free to help yourself to those. We'll get to some of those things here. So here's the Google Docs if you want to enter info. And then, all right, so let's keep going. So a couple of things I wanted to, and then one more thing on the Elevate side. I think we're also sort of built the largest sort of training platform now for these careers. And again, we've engaged our professionals from the network to sort of do the training stuff. Again, the goal is to create accessible training, but also that helps people advance in their careers. So the first topic I think Tim wanted me to hit on, actually, before we jump there, can I get a sense from the audience? We have a manageable size group here of like the types of firms and places or interested careers that you guys are interested in, such that I can try to customize my advice as well for you guys. Do you want to start? Why don't we start from the top? Leo, you're on my top left.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a sophomore. And in the business school, I'm considering investment banking mainly, for a career path.
Great. Jack?
Yeah, I'm a junior in the business school, doing investment banking next summer, and then possibly hoping to do private equity after that.
Okay, where are you headed?
Bank of America, Merrill Lynch.
Cool. We've got a good group of Bank of America folks on the Finect thing, so that's cool. All right, Tim, I know your story. How about Aryaman?
I'm a sophomore in the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown, thinking about investment banking, consulting, something I'm thinking about as well, but at this point leaning towards investment banking.
Okay, cool. On the consulting front, we had on someone, actually we were featured by, Elevate was featured by McKinsey Global for like some of the stuff they're working on. So you should go back and listen to some of the conversations we've had with like the McKinsey folks, and maybe you'll get a sense of sort of what they're looking for and sort of that kind of stuff there, or their website, which also has Elevate on there. But anyway, so that's just a heads up for you. All right, Austin, how about you? I know you, we've connected before on LinkedIn. So by the way, if anyone wants to add me on LinkedIn, some of you guys already have, feel free. And if you have any questions that you don't want to ask here, you can ask me later. But okay, cool. Austin, you're Lazard, right? You're going to Lazard, right? Okay.
Yeah, next summer. Yep.
Okay. Lazard restructuring or M&A?
It's so the internship's generalist, so it's going to be M&A/restructuring, and then after the internship, I'll go into one of the two.
Okay, cool. Congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And then Maxim.
Hi, so I'm a freshman in the business school, and I'm considering investment banking for sure.
Okay, cool. David.
I'm a sophomore. I'm actually not in GUSIF. I'm in GUPREF, which is the real estate fund.
Okay.
So I'm partially interested in doing some sort of real estate, but also maybe investment banking.
Okay, excellent. Cool. We're going to do a bunch of real estate stuff. Actually, we're working on it in the fall. So we'll keep you in the loop about that stuff. Alex?
Yeah, so I'm a junior in the business school. I'm doing investment banking this summer, kind of like Jack, interested in what the private equity recruiting stuff
All right,
looks
so
like.
we'll touch on private equity. And where are you going? Where are you banking this summer?
Evercore.
Okay, cool. I had on someone from Evercore from our training actually, so that's cool.
Oh.
That's great. Yeah. So Jordan.
I'm a sophomore in the business school studying finance. I'm still deciding between investment banking and real estate debt.
Very cool. Very interesting. Both great places. Debt, especially now, real estate or not, is like such a fascinating area to be in. So very cool. Austin.
I'm a freshman in the business school. I'm in GUPref, not GUSIF, and I'm interested in maybe private equity or commercial real estate lending. So.
Okay, very cool. Naveen?
I'm a sophomore in the business school, and I'm interested in investment banking and maybe private equity.
Okay, cool. Fair enough. And Tyson, last but not least. Or he may be on mute. But let's go. Tyson, if you want to join, feel free. I know you may not be in a place to join, so that's not a problem. All right, cool. So we've kind of diverse. A lot of people, I think, looking at that sort of finance careers. So what I'll start off with, maybe for you guys, is just my sense of where I kind of see all these things shaking out. So as I think about investment banking, right? Like I know a lot of the folks here, some of you guys are going in, some of you guys are still thinking about it. If I were to summarize, and by the way, on the right are basically I just listed out. If you want more info that we may not get to on this call, like there's the talks that we featured on Elevate. You guys can go back and listen to professionals from those firms and hear more about these careers. I think investment banking to me is sort of the crux of the job is client advisory and execution. So you're really brought on as an advisor to these large firms or private equity firms or management teams or et cetera to provide strategic advice as well as transactional advice. What that means is you're being asked to basically say, hey, we want to grow this business in X, Y, and Z manner. We want to get out of this segment, or X, Y, and Z segment's not doing well. Can you guys give us advice? So from a financial sense, you're basically responsible for giving that advice and then executing on that advice, right? So that's kind of what the banking job is. Look, the pros of this type of stuff is you work on really complicated and complex deals and transactions. You definitely develop a deep sense of financial skill set, but I think you also, maybe there's a less of an operational focus that you might get in private equity or some of these other things. And then again, as you go on through this career, to the extent that you guys stay in it, it becomes a lot more about execution and relationships. And I think, more than it's about financial modeling and stuff like that. So the senior most bankers are actually the best sort of tacticians and M&A, and that's sort of what you build over your career. Again, we heard a lot about private investing already. So some of you guys are thinking about credit versus equity. To the extent that you are, I encourage you to go back, and there's a lot of speakers that we've had on the Elevate stuff. Like we had someone on from KKR Credit. We talked about the credit side. We had a bunch of people on from the private equity side. Blackstone, Carlyle, Apollo, some of these large firms, as well as some of the middle market firms. And the crux of the job here is really as an owner. So versus investment banking, this is sort of here, you kind of get out of the advisor mindset, and now you're sort of thinking about it from an ownership mindset, right? So if you were to buy this company and own it for, sort of period of time as an equity investor, what are the things that would be more interesting to you, right? So in this type of work, you tend to, over time, delve into sort of 3 to 5 companies, ideas, segments a year. So you may not get as much of like a breadth, but you'll definitely get a lot more depth into companies, ideas, and businesses. And really the other key here that I've noticed and I've learned from on the Elevate side is really finding that right fund or firm that's for you, right? A lot of you guys said, hey, I might be potentially interested in private equity. I'd say just like not all PE funds are created the same, and everything from fundraising to execution to deal work to teamwork to kind of how they think about transactions is very, very different, even at the largest and the middle market level, right? So I think for you, a lot of the diligence goes into hearing from these professionals, but also for yourself, figuring out what is your better work style and what's a work style that you like. And the PE side is much more important than on the banking side to do that, because there's smaller teams, there's kind of you're working with the same types of people all the time. And so it's really important to do that. There's some people, I didn't hear as much here on venture capital, but a lot of my Elevate students go into venture capital after their banking stint a lot of times. And again, here it's earlier stage. So that's kind of the one big difference. And then again, we can get into that if folks have questions. And obviously public investing side, we've had a ton of people on the Elevate side. On the public side, again, I didn't hear a lot of public investing from the answers that I just heard, so we won't spend as much time on that. But obviously this is an area where the crux of the job is like finding public ideas and investing ideas. It's similar to the private investing side in the sense that you're trying to get an edge and trying to think like an investor, but here you're doing it in an area where all the information is public versus in the private side, most of the information is private, right? So it's just a different type of work. And then finally, some of you guys mentioned, consulting. Again, something to think about there. I started my career out in consulting for several different reasons, but again, something to think about for you guys. So let me pause and sort of see if anyone has any sort of questions on that, or any topics that you guys want to delve into.
Could you talk a little bit more about portfolio companies and the PE side?
Yeah, sure. And anything in specific?
I was just wondering the degree of like almost how much you manage and how much control you have over those companies.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say from my experience of having seen like all types of PE firms and having been at a few different ones, it depends on two different things. One is the stage of the firm, like where it is. It's when kind of mega fund all the way down to like growth investing, and then it depends on your level. So let me start with the level, right? So, and it's sort of think of it like a matrix. So basically it's a good question that Naveen asked is like, how much involvement perhaps as a professional do you get with portfolio companies as a private equity investor? If you just step back as a private equity investor, there's kind of three big parts of the job. So one is sourcing transactions, right? So getting new ideas and into the pipeline so you can invest in them. Number two is transaction execution, where you're actually driving transactions to fruition, basically, buying and selling companies and doing the entire deal for yourself. And then the third element of it, which is the part you just mentioned, which is portfolio company management. Basically now that you own the company, you got to help run it and then make sure it's running well and then improve it such that you can kind of sell it in a few years at a better multiple or at a better price. So on that side, look, if you go to a mega fund where, kind of Goldman, where I was, and some of our peers at the associate level, you're really not doing a lot of that, right? So hang on guys, 1 second. Sorry, yeah. So at that level, like you're at an associate, it's like an analyst, investment banking 2.0. You're doing the same like financial analysis, financial modeling, and very similar. You're obviously running PE deals now, but you get very little of that portfolio company management stuff other than maybe once a quarter board meetings and things like that. As you progress up the level though, so our senior associates and our junior principals, will have them participate in board meetings or kind of run more of the day-to-day interactions with the CFOs and things like that. At the sort of senior principal and then director level is when you're actually sitting on boards and you're actually managing a lot more. So I would say it's on the director and up, you're looking at 30 to 40% of your time with portfolio companies, if not more, right? So if the company's not doing so great, which a lot of companies haven't been this year, you're basically like spending a lot of your time helping companies kind of, do better, right? So I think, at sort of, you think about it at the largest funds, analyst, very little. So I say like less than 10%, associate, senior associate principal, maybe somewhere like 25-ish%. And then beyond that, director, and beyond, it's sort of 40 to 50%, if not more. So and a lot of the times you're actually thinking, you're like strategizing behind the scenes of like, okay, should we replace management? Like, should we get sort of help for this person and et cetera? So I think there's a lot of work that happens, even though you're not like always working on it. And then the second dimension is sort of along size of the firm, right? So at the mega funds, again, you're doing less so early on, but as the firm size like sort of goes to upper middle market, or maybe even away from private equity to more growth and VC side, you're then spending a little bit more time, depending on the firm or depending on the portfolio company, because those teams tend to be smaller, and even the companies that you're running are smaller, right? So you can get to work the CFO. Like at sort of the mega fund level, these are billion-dollar entities that you might be owning, right? So it's not like the CFOs are super busy and they're doing other stuff. So as an associate, you're sort of dealing with that, like the middle level people. Whereas if you're a smaller PE fund, you might be doing a lot of it. So again, it depends on the level, and then it also depends on the size of the fund that you go into. The third dimension on that is like a lot of funds have a much more operational focus, right? So especially this year, given there's been so much liquidity and operational issues that a lot of funds are having, a lot of PE professionals have been spending time on the operational side. So again, a lot of the big funds have specific operations groups that do that on a day in, day out basis, like Blackstone has Tac Ops, like, and all of our other competitors. But then some of the middle market funds don't really have a specialized operating group. So maybe in that context, you're spending more time at the operational side. So again, depends, I think you either spend a lot of time with portfolio companies when things are really good or really, really bad. I know when we've sold companies, I would be much more involved because we're trying to, get a company sold, versus if it was just business as usual, maybe would be less involved. So that there's that element as well. So that's kind of how I'd summarize, based on my experience, the involvement of the portfolio company level. Is that helpful, Naveen?
Yeah, very much so. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you got it. What else, guys? Questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. So I am doing a generalist internship next summer, and I'm wondering, to what extent does the sort of industry group that you get placed into ultimately direct where your career may go going forward? Like, for example, I know that on the VC slide, you said that an understanding, an interest in tech is really important. If you want to do something like VC, do you have to work in a TMT group for banking before then?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the way to think about that, I think VC is the only one that's sort of unique for that. In other words, like, so let me break this down. Yes and no. So the answer is there's plenty of people, and let's take VC out for a second, right? So let's just think about exit ops in general. I know plenty of people who, and I started in FIG, most of my analysts ended up going to mega funds, which were industry agnostic, right? So when you're an associate, I had on someone from Blackstone on my training she was one of my analysts at Goldman FIG, and then she went and did Blackstone generalist, and she'd never worked with an EBITDA company her entire analyst career. So kind of think about it. So at that level, they're sort of looking for that curiosity, that understanding of the industry. I have a slides on kind of what the private equity roles are looking for, and maybe if we have time, we'll get to that. I think, so I'd say it's important to a degree, right? If there's an industry you really, really want to know, you want to work on, I would kind of put that as a priority and then try to get into that. But if you're just like, look, I'll go into an area where generally I have these 2 or 3 ideas or industries that I think are interesting that I want to go into, then I think you're okay to sort of see how that goes and then be opportunistic about how it goes. I haven't ever felt like, there's people who know they want to do consumer retail or they want to do healthcare, and that's what they do. And there's people that are very successful. Like a lot of my Elevate people knew they wanted to go into healthcare, like from the time they were like juniors, and they were like healthcare, and they only targeted that. And a lot of my other ones were like, hey, I really just want to do M&A and restructuring because I'm less agnostic. I want to just learn how processes work. So sort of answer for yourself if there's any like predetermined industries that you really, really want to get into. Then I guess point number 2 there is that I think you should think about exit ops. So the VC point is interesting, right? So I think for certain things like growth and VC, look, VC isn't even like, I would say maybe only less than 20% of all my Elevate students across all these different banks, across like the top 10 banks, even like think about VC. So it's even less than that. So maybe 10%. So it's a very unique field because it's really challenging to get into. And I think banking, you got to have something more than banking to break into VC, right? So other than the mega funds, like, the soft banks of the world, et cetera, but even folks like Greylock and Sequoia, who, we've worked with in the past on the Elevate side, or those guys are looking for more operational experience, or they're looking for something beyond just a banking experience to kind of get you over the hump. And obviously, yes, they're looking for the technology thing. So if if you're thinking about VC, I would strongly encourage you to go to like a tech group or something like that, if you can, or a healthcare IT group, or, financial technology. There's obviously every industry group now has a tech component to it, but that'll definitely help you out a lot. But broadly for PE, look, you always want to find and work in industries that you are actually genuinely interested in. So if there are things, like I said, that are super, you're interested in, go get them. But if you're sort of use this as a process to like learn and sort of be like, I'm open to a couple different things, then I think there's less of a pressure into doing that, knowing that, there's always going to be positives about the portfolio that you bring in recruiting and negatives about it. And that's going to be one of the negatives if you are looking at that. But there'll be a lot of the other positive things because you've gone to a great group, gotten a lot of deal experience and all that. Ultimately, guys, recruiting is sort of all about your positioning of your story of whatever you have. Yes, you can predetermine some of these things, but a lot of these things, people are going to ask you, okay, you have industry experience, but you don't have deal experience, right? You have deal experience, but you don't have industry experience. So sort of like you got to overcome those in other ways. And it's sort of like, that's the storytelling aspect to recruiting that I think maybe a lot of people don't spend as much time on. Is that helpful, Austin?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Super. Yeah, you got it. I will, for the people that joined late, I don't know if folks are signing up on the Google Docs, but again, it's open for you guys to get info on the newsletter that we send out. I think it now goes to like 3,000 or so students. And I also send you the link. A few of you guys signed up for the Finect thing. I think that is a networking platform across different schools. So I encourage you guys to sign up if you want those resources. Okay, cool. So what else on the agenda? I guess what are the questions that people have?
I had a question really similar to Austin's, but I guess more specific to the PE route.
Yeah.
Especially like on the generalist program, if you're coming from a group like FIG or Energy that's just very specific within its own modeling and industry, what does that process look like if you decide you want to go, say, like infrastructure, private equity, or even like a big enough jump to tech, or mainly like a generalist side?
Yeah, look, I think you have to be realistic about everything, right? So kind of there's pros and cons to that, right? So one thing I'd say, if you're going, so let's say you go into FIG, right? FIG's a good example. NR is equally, let's choose one of the, let's choose FIG. Know that you're going to have done 2 years, whether it's under kind of balance sheet companies or like services companies or technology companies, in some context of financial services. Look, based on my experience in FIG, it is one of the more complicated industries, as is NR. So a lot of my analysts have made the case that, look, we get how these companies work, so we are able to kind of understand a lot of other things. So that's definitely a positive. But understand that I think you're going to be very, very attractive to the Apollos, to the Center Bridges, to sort of that type of firms who do a lot of work on the balance sheet side. They do a lot of work on the distress side. They do a lot of work, on sort of even financial services. Apollos has his own private equity financial services business, which is the largest, on the street. And so, and I work with them. But I think my point is, they prefer our candidates from Elevate who are, just more broadly, they prefer candidates who have experience in FIG or something like that, right? So my point to you is, know that is a strength of yours, but an equally, on the other side, the weakness of yours is you're not going to be as positioned in tech as, as a Silver Lake or General Atlantic or one of these guys who have that tech kind of, looking for that. So you're going to be at a disadvantage to someone who's coming from, GSTMT or whatever, right? So I think just know that going in. So if you know that going in, that you really want to do something, let's try to get yourself aligned to that early on. But here's where the opportunity lies. Like, if you're interested in infrastructure, like they're not out there like going the traditional buyout route. So that, I think, puts really a lot of onus on you, and actually the opportunity for you to reach out to these firms that you're interested in and be like, hey, I'm going into doing this. I'm really interested in X, Y, and Z. They're not having 50 people bang on their doors like some of these other opportunities are. So I think I would turn that around and say, like, where's the opportunity for you to do that? And that's a tremendous opportunity, I think, for you guys to like, especially the infrastructure side, especially ones that aren't as traditional in the recruiting process. Like, I just say that because as we're building out the recruiting function here at Elevate, and we're working with a bunch of private equity firms and banks to do that. I think what is more telling than pedigree or university is like how the candidate communicates their interest in industries and their passion for that stuff, right? So now every undergrad student has a Medium post or a Medium blog or a Substack blog, it feels like, about the VC industry or whatever. So whatever it takes to like differentiate you guys in the market. Again, it could be the firms you go to in deals, but the things that you guys can do, I know I'm not recommending everyone starts a Medium blog tomorrow about tech, but I think it's just like whatever you guys can do to differentiate yourself, I think becomes very important. And that starts with networking. And I'm the biggest proponent of networking, which is why we've launched things like Finect and things like that. But it never is where you work that gets you the job. It's who you know that gets you. It's never what you've done. It's who you know. Like I'm telling you guys this, I've seen this 8 years over in my career. I've seen this multiple years within Elevate. How do we get from 300 resumes at GS down to 50? Like it's impossible because everyone looks the same on paper. You know what I mean? So again, this is where all the networking stuff that I encourage everyone to do is so important, because you just never know. Like, let's say you meet part of the Finect platform, someone who's going to a different bank, but then 2 years later, you guys are both recruiting for something and you're now working in the same class. So you just don't know, right? So I think that's the thing. I encourage you to take as many advantages of alumni and all that stuff as much as you can, and absolutely like crush that and do that I think will really set you guys up in a much better spot going forward. And that would be my number one recommendation. So kind of roundabout way to what you asked, Alex, like I would say it doesn't hurt you as much as you think. Nothing does. Like 2 years in your career shouldn't really hurt you in any way. But I think if you are looking for that next step, I would just say position yourself in a way that actually helps you get there in a place that you want to be in. That could change. Like you may go in thinking you want to do tech. 2 years later, you're like, I don't really love it, but that's fine. You can just kind of adapt at that point, but make a decision based on what you know now. So that's the other thing I would say. Okay. So was that helpful, Alex?
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. what else what you guys have? And I mean, I have a few slides I can go through too, but I want to make sure I answer you guys' questions.
I joined a little bit late, so I'm not sure if like anyone asked this, but I was wondering about the importance of doing an MBA.
Yeah.
And now how, because I've heard it changes a little bit, that like it has become less and less important in PE. And I was just wondering what's your take, if it's true or not, and what's like the optimal time to to do an MBA.
I will caveat this by saying that at Elevate, we're also partnered with all of the top 10 MBA schools. So, but I will give you my honest opinion in that, like, for the recruiting positions that I help companies fill at the principal level in private equity, they want people with an MBA. So I think that's today. That's not 5 years from now. That's today, right? So a lot of the stuff that we're helping people in terms of find candidates on is like the top 5 MBA schools. It's not even just like every school in the world. It's like there's a set of schools that they go to, right? So I think there's definitely some credentializing that happens there. Look, and I've spoken to all the MBAs. I think they're sharp, et cetera. And in some sense, I think of my Elevate like membership right now. You guys, from GUSIF, from my Duke Investment Club, from Harvard Investment, all these different clubs. You guys are the class of MBA classes 5 years from now, right? So in some sense, there's that network that we're building here already. So I can also say this in that, yes, it is true that at the private equity, there's two types of kind of things here, right? One is if you have a pretty good sense of like where you want to go, you're generally kind of able to figure that out. And yes, you're able to kind of transition one to another. I don't think you need an MBA. Like, I think the MBA is really good for credentialization and all these other things. But on the other hand, the MBA is really good for 3 types of people. And I kind of said this, I think, on other sessions, but it's sort of 1, people who want a career switch, 2, people who need that to transition up to like a different level, which is still a lot in PE that they ask for, or 3, they want to sort of build out skills. They want to do something entrepreneurial or do something completely different. They want to build out all these other skill sets. So they're coming from finance background, but have zero kind of knowledge in marketing, strategy, finance, and also build their network, right? So those are the 3 like implicit benefits of an MBA, right? So that said, what I would say is, yes, it's sort of diminishing, but that also goes up over time. I think, look, for my view is, I would say in 5 years, I think the bottom drops out a little bit of the MBA, where you're like, all right, I don't really think I need to pay, 100, 150, 200 grand to get an MBA from like, this 50th ranked school or something like that. But look, understand that there's tiers to everything, and it's a way to credentialize yourself. A lot of jobs still look for it. But I still think at the top level, like there is a lot of weight that goes to saying, hey, I went to a, HBS, or I went to wherever, and it's sort of the network that it opens you up to, right? More than anything. So I still am on the fence that if you guys are still underclassmen, I would reserve that. I would take that option, take that like call option, if you will, and kind of make that call in a couple of years. Take your GMAT or whatever if you want. A lot of my students are doing the deferred program this year, and they did it last year. And so, I mean, that's a thing you can think about doing, because a lot of my seniors seemingly have a little bit more time now that they have jobs. I think, so I think, that's one thing to think about. But more realistically, a lot of my students I've advised them to, if you want to take the GMAT, fine, because it lasts for 5 years, but sort of see how your first year, couple years of your career go. Like HBS just released their kind of interview schedules today. I wrote a bunch of recommendations for them. So I kind of am intimately like in that process as well. And their apps were up, like, and so it's a very cyclical thing too. So, you kind of have to figure, and so who knows what it'll be in 3 years, right? So I think you guys have to just sort of, don't make a decision too early. That's the other thing I say. Like, if you don't have to, don't do it. And if you go to a firm, love it, don't do it. It's 2 years of not working. That's a huge opportunity cost. If you go to a firm and then go to another firm and you're like, these 2 things are not for me, I want to kind of transition to something completely different, and I kind of need that MBA to do it because I don't know if I can do it on my own at that elite level, then yeah, go get it, right? I think it's sort of leave that optionality for yourself, and then kind of go from there. So is that helpful, Adam?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Okay, excellent. Cool, you got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think one thing I mentioned that you relate to, I see you're going to BAML, Adam. Like you should look into the Finect thing, which is the networking thing. We've got a bunch of BAML folks on there, so you can connect with other people going into BAML if you want.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I just sent out the link. So who else had a question on this stuff? Okay, so let's keep going.
I just have a quick question, kind of follow up to Adam's. How does the transition work from like associate at a private equity firm to like, do you do 2 years and then you either get like kicked out and have to get an MBA, or like how does that Like, do you get promoted? Like, how does it work after the,
Yeah, good
the
question.
analyst
Most,
level?
and you should ask this to the Centerbridge guy that's coming in next week if you want, or I'll ask him. But I think what I know and what I've seen, which is every firm in the world, from our purview here, I think most of the places it's a very up and out thing. So it's not structured. A lot of places have a 2-year program. So you are expected to sort of leave unless you're doing exceptionally well, leave to go get an MBA or leave to do something else. Unless you're doing exceptionally well, then there's kind of principal roles created for you. Like the principal role is kind of a very aspirational role, I feel like, which is as in for all the associates in the sense, and what I mean by that is like, again, this is a few years out for you guys, but I'm happy to answer it. I don't want to like, you know, I guess take it with a grain of salt because you're still a couple years away from some of this stuff. But generally, the principal role is if you're doing exceptionally well, you'll get direct promoted. A lot of times they want you to go back to business school. So most of the firms like TPG, all these guys like Blackstone, all these guys want you to go back to business school. Apollo is probably an exception, is that they don't require you to go back to business school, and sort of it's like a straight through program. A lot of my analysts who've gone there have just kind of straight through and made it to principal. But I think it sort of depends on the firm. And then yeah, it's sort of like you get an indication of if you're up for that role at maybe your first or second year in, and then you sort of make your call after that. I think at the PE level, I would say it's a third, and a third. So I would say a lot of people stay at the firm or stay in PE. A third of them go back and probably, maybe a little more than a third, go back and get an MBA, and a third of them probably go to a hedge fund and go kind of on the public side, join a lot of these kind of up and coming folks where you can sort of just make a senior associate. You may not need an MBA, but yet you're sort of doing very impactful stuff. So I would say that's sort of how it usually pans out. Again, very firm specific, so it's hard to answer that. But I think generally that's how I've seen it work. Okay, cool. So with sort of the few minutes we have left, I will sort of hit a couple other things, and you guys can tell me. I'm not going to do the overview of an investment bank or banking groups unless folks want me to do that. We won't do transaction guide. I may not even spend a lot of time on. I'll just spend maybe a minute on this for the underclassmen. Having done X number of kind of these sessions and interviews and at the undergrad and as well as the grad level, I think as someone as an interviewer or a firm, we're looking for 5 things, right? We're looking for analytical ability. So my point in laying this out is it always seems like a black box. Let it not be a black box. Like for you guys, just incorporate in your experiences and your learnings, like, how to do this better. So one is analytical ability. So what can you prove, whether it's prior experiences or projects and stuff that you've done at school that you can exhibit that. Number 2 is leadership. I think this, to me, more than anything, what attracts me to a resume is people being on boards of groups like, GUSIF and other things. That to me is a huge positive when I see that for someone. And then, but I think just finding things that you can be impactful on as part of a leadership capacity is a huge positive. That's what differentiates at the end of the day, like the resume reviews, guys. When people are like, oh, how do you get from 300 to 50? This is one of the main things. Drive initiative, again, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a finance thing, but what have you done that taken something from X to kind of X squared? I think that's important. Interest in finance, again, at the interviews, the informational interviews, et cetera, this becomes really important. And then finally, communication skills, which is kind of sort of, we measure it in a lot of different ways. So that's on the what are we looking for? And then again, not a lot of underclassmen here, but I do want to emphasize a couple of things for you guys that as I look back, that I advise sort of all my Elevate students is, I would spend the requisite time up front exploring these career options. So a lot of the questions you guys are asking are valid, but sort of do that alongside an introspection of your own strengths and weaknesses. And this is true any point in time when you make a career transition, and understand like why you think you understand what the careers are, but also why you'll be good at this career, right? So some people I know who went from banking to PE were terrible investors. So figure out for yourself if that's something you actually enjoy, rather than just going to PE because everyone else is going to PE. Like it's not going to matter if you're not good at it, right? So it doesn't matter. So I think for me, it's just kind of figuring out if that is something you want to do and why. And then once you have a better sense, though, you gotta have a laser-like focus. These are competitive careers, right? And it really recruiting favors people that are prepared. And so whatever you could do, what that means for you, again, we can get into that at now or a later point. But do what it takes to sort of get there. And I think, look, careers are never linear, right? And we all like to think they are. Hey, I'm going to go here, then I'm going to go here, then I'm going to business school, then I'm going to go to this, and then I'm going to be like, Ken Griffin when I'm 25 or 35. So it usually like doesn't happen that way, right? So you kind of have to figure out, because along the way you realize like, I like this, I don't like this, I am actually good at this, I'm not good at this. So those are the things that you have to figure out. So it's sort of like a journey. So don't put too much pressure on yourself, other than do what you can in what you can control at any point in time. So if you think you want to do something, go all in into that thing. Then if you realize it's not what you want to do, then change course. It's it always kind of favors people that are hardworking and sort of kind of be able to go get at it. And the last thing I'll say is about recruiting, whether it's in the banking side, whether it's the PE side or VC or hedge fund or whatever, there's three aspects to it in my experience. One is networking, one's skills building, and one's experience building. You're not going to be successful in any of these kind of top careers if you kind of don't get some of this stuff right. So kind of spend equal time on that. So I unfortunately have had students who spend a lot of time just on networking, but none of the other stuff. So they'll get an interview, but they may not do well in the interview, right? So a lot of people who've done the opposite, where they just sort of take a lot of courses and then don't build a network, and they never get an interview to begin with. So I think sort of like you guys have to kind of play to the middle. Obviously, going to Georgetown, you have amazing alumni, you have access to all the Elevate stuff, with GUSIF. And beyond, and I think so. Just really like take advantage of people ahead of you who've like gone on this path. And also you're sort of lucky in that you do get a lot of great firms that coming in, but don't let that limit you, right? Kind of continue to challenge yourself on the career side. I'm not going to get into the kind of the summary of the finance stuff or even networking. I think a couple things I'll say on networking is it's really like a career long skill, and networking sort of has a bad rap in that, like, oh, it's only really sort of important when you're looking for a job. And I think that's like a terrible way to think about networking. It's actually important to do your job successfully. Like when we think of bankers we want to hire on private equity, when we think of consulting firms we want to hire, it's usually always someone who I've known for 8-10 years. It's never someone who, just showed up that day and gave me a call, right? Or something. So I think just understand that. And it took me a while to understand this, right? And I think I was like, why is networking so important? Like, I don't care what these people do. Why do I need to connect with these people? And I was kind of in that mindset when I started my career. And I think it's all about, I figured it out. It's all about like trust and information, right? So who do you want to be working alongside? It's the people you trust, people that you know, because there's kind of very tiny movements in these, in these deals that tip the scale one way or the other, right? So I want to be advised by people that I trust. I want to work alongside people I trust, because at the end of the day, I want to be successful in what I'm doing, right? So I will work with investors or bankers or advisors who I trust. And again, the best way to build that trust is kind of continual devotion to sort of building those relationships. Again, you guys will continue to see the impact of that over time, but just let that be something you guys maybe take away from this, if anything. And the other thing is just preparation. That I think is one thing when people always ask me, like, what can we do at times like this, or just in general that's in our control? And I'm always like, well, yeah, the thing you can control is preparation. So whether it's for networking sessions, work meetings, whatever, and it'll get hard as you go through your career because there'll be so many competing priorities. But the people that are exceptionally successful, I found being like the ones that are uber prepared for both how the meeting could go well, but also what happens when the meeting kind of doesn't go well, right? So I think just on the back end, there's been plenty of meetings where my associates have really stepped up and said, hey, this is kind of going all over the place. Like, we've done this additional work. Like, how do we think about this company in X, Y, and Z context? And that actually really shows. So I think that's one thing I'll leave you guys with. So at the risk of making this too much like a pedantic lecture, let's end with any other kind of questions that folks have, to the extent that that's interesting, that you want me to cover.
This seems like a very early question in the recruiting process relative to the overall discussion. But as a sophomore, what do you recommend doing in terms of securing a sophomore internship if you're not within a diversity group?
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's got to be on the networking side. So yeah, I think I have had people within Elevate that have been actually somewhat successful in getting sophomore year internships, and that's been via networking, right? Look, obviously a bunch of firms just went through their diversity recruiting the last couple of weeks, right? So a lot of our people were involved in that. But there will be spots that open up, and look, it may not always be like the bulge bracket firms and stuff like that. I think if you're talking about that, I would just start developing relationships there, and you just never know. Like, we've had people where someone really liked a candidate because they brought something very unique to the table. Like, we've had candidates that came in and said, hey, I really like the healthcare space. I've been working on it for X, Y, and Z years. Like, I really understand it. These are what I think. And then we've had our healthcare team reference them to us saying, hey, we really want this candidate, and then we've found a way to bring them in as an intern. So kind of, that's where networking really helps. But I think the more realistic path might be going to like a regional or sort of a boutique or somewhere where there's not as rigid of a network, kind of a diversity type of thing and sort of go it that way, because you ultimately want to be sort of targeting your junior year internship, right? So, whereas the sophomore year program maybe accounts for 10% of the junior, 10 to 15%, like the bulk of the recruiting happens for junior year. So the two things that people see for junior year internships, one is your involvement on campus, what you're doing. And number two is where you're working the next summer. I think that's a huge factor for people to sort of figure out. So you may be better off just getting an internship in some finance role. It could be trading, it could be hedge funds, it could be private equity, it could be banking at some regional firm, and then translate that into there's a bunch of firms in DC or wherever you're from to do that. So, I mean, I think there's no good answer for you other than I'd say, maybe take a multi-dimensional approach. One is just try to get a job you can, and then at the same time, network your ass off and try to get something that could lead a foot in the door. But there isn't sort of anything formal that I think I could recommend to you saying, hey, you could do this program or something like that. Just, we're working with a few firms and we'll be, with that for some similar stuff, but not as much on the sophomore side, but I think more on the junior senior side. But I think to the extent that stuff comes up, be in the loop with our stuff. Obviously, Leo is familiar with our recruiting behind the scenes stuff that we're working with. So I think, just be in the loop of some of the stuff. And I think on my job, one of the things I try to do is get sort of access to our people within Elevate to some of these opportunities. So, to that extent that's helpful, we'll keep you posted. But I think more systematically, there isn't much you can do other than sort of build networks, build relationships, but just get some job for your summer, right? That's something that you could speak to because that will carry a lot of weight for when you guys go into full time. Cool, is that helpful? Maybe I'll take one more question if folks have it. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, it was great to meet you guys. Again, I will say for those who haven't, thanks for those who have. I just put the links up again. Tim and Leo have those links, so you can reach out to them as well. But yeah, I don't know, Tim, do you have anything else from your mind?
Not much else material. I would just say, I'd highly encourage everyone to take advantage of those resources that Kaushik has talked about, and some of the networking initiative that he's doing, and some of the training materials. I think that's been really helpful for me. So I would just, speaking from personal experience, recommend those. Other than that, I think we really enjoyed. I think this is really helpful for folks. Hopefully we can do something like this again at some point.
Look forward to it, guys. All right, best of luck to everyone, and yeah, good luck this semester. See you guys.